15. 15. So, okay, we're in the third section. Oh no, we're in the fourth. Verse what? 15. Really? Okay. Oh, okay. So it's the fifth section then. We're steaming ahead. Section, well, fourth section. Fourth section. Is it fourth or fifth? Let me just check. I got myself together here. No, it's the fifth section. Anyway, okay, it's the fifth section, beginning with verse 15, and the section is titled, let's see, Predictions from the Brahmins about Parikshit Maharaj. Wow. Okay. But first of all, our prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadeshatarne Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Right, so let me just make the screen slightly brighter. Vanchakapatarubhyascha kripas sindhubhya eva cha Padidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. All right, so here we are. We're in the 12th chapter, the birth of Emperor Parikshit, and he has just taken birth. And now, as is the practice, or was the practice, when people were capable of doing these things, the Brahmins, the astrologers and other really highly perceptive Brahmins, they are doing, well, like horoscopes and things, and just getting, in different ways, getting different types of insights into who is Maharaj Parikshit and what is he going to do, because they know this is a very special personality. So, okay, let's I don't think we read, oh, he's gone now. Did we read the verses? No, we didn't. Did we? Yesterday morning, you were there. You know, he would know, but he's gone. Anyway, I'm going to read the verses because I'm pretty sure we didn't read them. So yes, this is section E, the fifth section of the 12th chapter, and predictions from the Brahmins about Parikshit, verse 15 to verse 31, and here we go. We will now read just the verses so we understand what is the situation in this section. Verse 15. The learned Brahmins, who were very satisfied with the charities of the king, addressed him as the chief amongst the Purus, and informed him that his son was certainly in the line of descent from the Purus. Verse 16, the Brahmin said, "This spotless son has been restored by the all-powerful and all-pervasive Lord Vishnu, the personality of Godhead, in order to oblige you. He was saved when he was doomed to be destroyed by an irresistible, supernatural weapon." That's, of course, referring to Ashvatthama's attempt to kill Maharaj Parikshit in the womb of his mother, Uttara. Verse 17, "For this reason, this child will be well known in the world as one who is protected by the personality of Godhead. O most fortunate one, there is no doubt that this child working? For this reason, this child will be well known in the world as one who is protected by the personality of Godhead. O most fortunate one, there is no doubt that this child will become a first-class devotee and will be qualified with all good qualities." Verse 18, the good king Yudhisthira inquired, "O great souls, will he become as saintly a king, as pious in his very name, and as famous and glorified in his achievements as others who appeared in this great royal family?" Verse 19, the learned Brahmin said, "O son of Pritha, this child shall be exactly like King Ikshvaku, son of Manu, in maintaining all those who are born. And as for following the Brahminical principles, especially in being true to his promise, he shall be exactly like Ram, the personality of Godhead, the son of Maharaj Dasarath." Verse 20, "This child will be a munificent donor of charity and protector of the surrendered, like the famous King Shibi of the Ushinara country, and he will expand the name and fame of his family like Bharat, the son of Maharaj Dushyanta." 21, "Amongst great bowmen, this child will be as good as the Arjunas. He will be as irresistible as fire and as unsurpassable as the ocean." Gosh, amazing. "This child will be as strong as a lion and as worthy a shelter as the Himalaya mountains. He will be forbearing like the earth and as tolerant as parents." That's interesting. That's a good one. 23, "This child will be like his grandfather, Yudhisthira, or Brahma, in equanimity of mind. He will be munificent like the Lord of the Kailash hill, Shiva, and he will be the resort of everyone, like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, who is even the shelter of the goddess of fortune." Verse 24, "This child will be almost as good as Lord Sri Krishna, by following in his footsteps. In magnanimity, he will become as great as King Rantidev. And in religion, he will be like Maharaj Yayati. 25. This child will be like Bali Maharaj in patience, a staunch devotee of Lord Krishna like Prahlad Maharaj, a performer of many Ashvamedha sacrifices, horse sacrifices, and a follower of the old and experienced men. 26. This child will be the father of kings who will be like sages. For world peace and for the sake of religion, he will be the chastiser of the upstarts and the quarrelsome. 27. After hearing about his death, which will be caused by the bite of a snake bird, sent by a son of a Brahmin, he will get himself freed from all material attachment and surrender unto the personality of Godhead, taking shelter of him. 28. After inquiring about proper self-knowledge from the great philosopher son of Vyasadeva, he will renounce all material attachment and achieve a life of fearlessness. 29. Thus, those who were expert in astrological knowledge and in performance of the birth ceremony instructed King Yudhisthira about the future history of the child. Then, being sumptuously remunerated, they all returned to their respective homes. 30. The child would become famous in the world as Parikshit, examiner, because he would come to examine all human beings in his search after that personality whom he saw before his birth. Thus he would come to constantly contemplate him. And verse 31. As the moon in its waxing fortnight develops day after day, so the royal prince Parikshit very soon developed luxuriantly under the care and full facilities of his guardian grandfathers. Wow. Amazing. Just amazing. I mean, it is just incredible, isn't it? That these people could have that type of insight. It's just amazing. Amazing that they even know how he's going to die. Yeah, and this they can actually see because it's a science. Sure, it's really amazing. All right, so devotees, here we go. Let us go through and see what Srila Prabhupada says in the purports. So, okay, first let us read again verse 15. The learned Brahmins, who were very satisfied with the charities of the king, addressed him as the chief amongst the Purus and informed him that his son was certainly in the line of descent from the Purus. And there's no purport. So, let's carry on. verse 16, the Brahmin said, "This spotless son has been restored by the all-powerful and all-pervasive Lord Vishnu, the personality of Godhead, in order to oblige you. He was saved when he was doomed to be destroyed by an irresistible supernatural weapon." Right, so let's see what Srila Prabhupada says about this. Well, interesting, first of all. Srila Prabhupada says that there were two reasons why Lord Krishna saved Parikshit, child Parikshit. First is that he was already a spotless devotee, even in the womb of his mother. And the Lord protects his devotees. And the second was, he was the only surviving male descendant of Puru, the forefather of Maharaj Yudhisthira. And Krishna wanted to continue the line of kings from Puru, the Pandava dynasty. Yeah, because he knew these people are just the most qualified. So, yeah, in order to help the people. So, interesting point Prabhupada makes is that it's, anyway, it's a little way down this first paragraph. Lord Krishna is described here as Vishnu, and this is also significant. Lord Krishna, the original personality of Godhead, does the work of protection and annihilation in his capacity of Vishnu. Yes, actually, all the expansions, avatars, forms, partial forms, parts of parts, they're all inside Krishna. And extraordinary that it may sound, Srila Prabhupada, I don't think here, not really here exactly, but he makes the point, elsewhere at least, that because all these different forms of the Lord are within Lord Krishna, then particularly when it comes to protecting, annihilating, killing, you know, these pretty dramatic things, Krishna doesn't do it. Lord Vishnu does it. Of course, if you happen to be present when Krishna is killing some demons, if you have that good fortune somehow to be present, then it's not that you'll see that Krishna steps back, a four-armed Vishnu form steps out and kills the demon and then steps back in. It's not how it works. What you'll see Krishna killing the demon, but it's actually Lord Vishnu. Think about that. Anyway, yeah, that's how it works. Because here, at least in that sort of capacity, killing the demons, protecting the devotees, this is particularly the work of Lord, like of the avatars. And the avatars are avatars of Vishnu, in the sense that they descend into this world through Vishnu. They come from the spiritual world, It's not like they're always within Vishnu and sometimes they come out and then they go back and then they're within Vishnu again, and later they may step out and do something. They come from the spiritual world and they come through Vishnu. And then when they've done, and then they right wrongs and protect devotees and paritranaya sadhunam, vinashaya chaduskritam, all these types of things Krishna is famous for. From Bhagavad Gita, what verse is that? What's the verse number? No. What's the verse number? Paritranaya sadhunam. Just trying to keep you awake, actually. Anyway, excuse me. It's chapter 4, verse 8. Yeah. So that's all the business of the avatars. It's not just Krishna's business. Yeah. Actually, we talked about that on Janmashtami Day. We talked about that, yeah. How Krishna, from from a class of, from the book, Teachings of Queen Kunti. There, Srila Prabhupada explains that Lord Krishna, even though he says, paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam, and so on, that he comes to do these things, in a class which is transcribed, it appears in that book, Teachings of Queen Kunti. Srila Prabhupada explains that actually Krishna doesn't really appear to protect the devotees, kill the demons, or, he says actually, he doesn't really appear to kill the demons and re-establish religion. He comes because his devotees are missing him. And they feel, if my Lord does not appear, I will die. I will just die. I will not be able to survive. So to satisfy them, to please those devotees, Prabhupada says this is why Krishna appears. And because this is something that only Krishna can do. Nobody else can do it. When it comes to killing the demons, Prabhupada actually explains that by Krishna's arrangements, actually it was just a few days ago we read, I think, in Bhakti Vaibhava, by Krishna's arrangement, Krishna may not take part in wars, but what he does, he agitates the leaders of the different sides. Before the war, so that the leaders of the sides think, we got to fight. So then they fight by his instigation, you could say, and they kill each other. They kill each other. It's not that Krishna has to come. The demons kill each other. And if they don't kill each other, then time kills them. Yeah, time kills them. So it's not that if Krishna did not appear, that the demons would not be killed. The demons would definitely be killed, for sure. And re-establish the principles of religion. Well, Srila Prabhupada came. Different people have come, and in like ungodly times and re-established religion and got people inspired again. And Prabhupada did that so much. So much. It's amazing. I think none of us here would be chanting 16 rounds a day if Prabhupada hadn't come. Am I right? I'm sure I wouldn't have been chanting 16 rounds a day if it wasn't for Prabhupada. So he re-established principles of religion for me. That's at least one person, but I think he did for all of us. So we are 6 people here. And of course we know, for so many people, Prabhupada re-established the principles of religion in their lives, and millions of people actually. So in other words, it's not that. If Krishna did not come and principles of religion had become deteriorated to some degree, it's not that if Krishna had not come, principles of religion could not be improved, re-established. They definitely could be, and they have been. And Prabhupada is such an excellent example of that. So, right, okay. So, but anyway, our point was that Krishna here is addressed Prabhavishnuna in the Sanskrit, the last word, Prabhavishnuna, as the powerful, all-powerful Lord Vishnu. And he's not addressed as Krishna, specifically as Vishnu, because that killing business, that's the work of Vishnu. And even though, like we said, even though it appears that Krishna kills the demons, but actually, when he's here, Lord Vishnu does it. Although you can't see it. You can't see Lord Vishnu, as we said, stepping out, killing the demons, stepping back into Krishna. Right-ho. And, right. Well, you know, about the second reason he was the only surviving male descendant of Puru, forefather of Maharaj Yudhisthira. The thing was that the Pandavas were too old, and Draupadi, because this was Parikshit is their grandson, not son. They're old. They're at least, anyway, I mean, not old, but they're probably around 50, something like that. So it's unlikely that they would produce children. Anyway, Srila Prabhupada goes on here in the purport. Parikshit is described here as spotlessly white because he's a pure devotee who has come simply to execute the mission of the Lord. Yeah, so he's a spotless, pure devotee. And then Srila Prabhupada gets into an explanation of why Krishna appears. Yeah, which, you know, as we've said before, he does on many occasions in the course of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, the unalloyed, the pure devotees come to execute the mission of the Lord, which is to reclaim the conditioned souls back home, back to Godhead. So that the pure devotees come for that. The Lord helps by presenting his literatures. Yeah, then he sends the devotees, Prabhupada explains, and such transcendental literatures, missionaries and representatives of the Lord are spotlessly white, because the contamination of the material qualities cannot even touch them. And they're always protected by the Lord. So, Parikshit was protected. Oops. Excuse me, computer. Okay, yeah, so let's carry on down here. Right, and then Srila Prabhupada, last thing in the purport, goes into a bit of a description of the Brahmastra, which he's also already described to some degree. It was supernaturally powerful, and nothing material could resist its force. But the Lord was able to. He counteracted the Brahmastra by his all-powerful potency, just to save the devotee. Okay, and so on to verse 17. For this reason, this child will be known in the world as one who is protected by the personality of Godhead. O most fortunate one, there's no doubt that this child will become a first-class devotee and will be qualified with all good qualities. Okay, let me just check what. All good qualities, all right. Okay, so let's have a look at the purport here also. And Srila Prabhupada makes a very interesting point. The Lord gives protection to all living entities. You might think he only gives protection to the devotees, but he gives protection to all living beings. Yes. Yeah, okay. So Srila Prabhupada goes into, first of all, he refers to Kata Upanishad, Shvetashvatar Upanishad, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam, Eko Bahuda Yo Vidadati Kaman. That there are two categories of eternal living entities. One category has many members. The other category has one member. But Eko, it's interesting, this word ek, famous Hindi word which everyone knows, even if they're not, at least every Indian knows, even if they're not Hindis. You've heard the word ek before, right? Must have. Means one, but it's a Sanskrit word too. Yeah. Just like I discovered, I thought this word pani for water was a Hindi concoction, some sort of modern North Indian concoction, but it's in Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a Sanskrit term for water. Haribol. a little history, linguistic history. All right, so eko bahudo. How does it go? Eko bahuna. Bahunam. Eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman. The one, the ek, the one. Yo eko bahunam. For the many. Bahunam means the many or for the many. Yo vidadati kaman. He fulfills their desires. Yes. So Prabhupada refers to that here, kind of paraphrases it more or less. Yeah. And if the many know him, they'll become peaceful. Right. So the protection. How is the protection? What's the story here about the protection? For the devotees like Parikshit, he's saving Parikshit right now. Well, I mean, he did, not right now, but just before he saved Parikshit. Yes. But for the non-devotees, anyway, Prabhupada doesn't really get into detail about how he protects the non-devotees. He just says such protection is given by his different potencies to different grades of living beings. Yeah, so, I mean, that's the non-devotees. But a couple of days ago, a couple of nights ago, yeah, I forget exactly, but just this week, for sure, Srila Prabhupada made the point, you may remember, Srila Prabhupada made the point that Lord Krishna is protecting the non-devotees by stimulating them to realize what is this material world, and that, you know, I can't carry on in this material world or in material life. That's how Krishna protects the conditioned souls, the non-devotees. It's called tough love. But in this case, it's really tough. Not making the living entity suffer, but seeing that the living entity gets the reactions of his or her fruitive activities, which not every time, but definitely many times, means getting some bad karmic reactions. You had any bad karmic reactions? Boy, I tell you what, bad karmic reactions. You had some bad karmic reactions? You had some? I don't want to talk about it because it's just too horrifying, actually. Too bad. But, you know, Krishna put me through the school of hard knocks and knocked me right out until I could see there's no alternative but Krishna consciousness. That was my experience. If I don't take to Krishna consciousness, I'm finished. My life is too hopeless. Anyway, let's not get into it too much, but you get the idea. Yeah, all these difficulties that are going on in the world of wars, you know, there's different wars going on, and just other things that are going on. It's all there. Of course, it's all there because of their karma, the non-devotees. It's all there because of their karma. But it's all there to stimulate them to understand the truth that this, whatever I'm going through right now, it's not that I'm just going to get over it and then get back into things, and, it's going to happen again, and it's going to be very, very difficult again. So therefore, I should stop the process of my material existence. This is Krishna's mercy on the conditioned souls. So, but anyway, Srila Prabhupada then he just mentions about protecting the non-devotees, but then the rest of the paragraph is all about the devotees. And Prabhupada goes into a somewhat elaborate description of the 3 levels of devotees. Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttama, or he refers to the Uttama Adhikaris as Mahabhagavats, which is, it's a synonym. Uttama Adhikari, Mahabhagavat. These are 2 terms for one thing, topmost devotee. Like 6 or what? We're talking of synonyms. 6 or half a dozen. Have you heard of half a dozen? Excuse me. Just trying to keep everyone awake. Yeah. Uttama Adhikari or Mahabhagavat, 2 terms for one thing. 6 or what? Half a dozen. You got it. Yeah. Just 2 terms for one thing. Yes, okay, so he talks about these 3 categories of devotees. And let me just run through the things he says. The characteristics, Kanishta Adhikaris, they visit a temple, yes. They worship the deity. They don't have much knowledge of the theistic science. Yeah. Therefore, because they don't have so much knowledge of the science of Krishna consciousness, one of the results of that, and think about it, it's a really interesting point, because they don't understand the science of Krishna consciousness much, therefore, they don't respect the devotees. Yeah. They're more impressed by some influential non-devotees than by advanced devotees, at least in many cases. And I don't know if you've heard me mention before, but when I was staying in Bhaktivedanta Manor from sometime in the middle of 1976 till the first week of January 1980, so 3 or 4 years I was there all the time. And Prabhupada would come a few times a year. Prabhupada would come flying to America from India, or from America back to India, and he'd stop. And sometimes he'd just visit Europe a little. And when he was there, sometimes on a few occasions, like every year, and maybe a couple of times a year, George Harrison would come to see him. And, in those days, still, we're talking about, you could say, the mid-70s, more or less. Or actually, yeah. Anyway, no. So I was there from early 74 till, I was there from early 74. Except for a couple of years I was out distributing and collecting, distributing books. But anyway, so when I was there, George Harrison would come every year, maybe twice a year. And, at that time he was still like big star. Gosh, really, really big. And he'd come and meet Prabhupada, and then he'd have a look around the manor. Walk around the grounds a little, and you'd see a few devotees following, like some distance behind, looking around the corner. There's George Harrison. It's George Harrison. Wow. Of course, he was a devotee too, but So it's a symptom of a Kanishta Adhikari that they can't appreciate devotees so much. Really, so much. And they've got a tendency to be more impressed by certain types of materialists. And therefore they're called materialistic devotees. Then Prabhupada gives a description of the second-class devotee. Has a genuine mood of service to the Lord, makes friendship with devotees, Prabhupada says, favors the neophytes, tries to help the innocent, in other words, and avoids the atheists. These are like the sort of foundational, fundamental characteristics of the Madhyama Adhikari or middle class devotee. Then the Mahabhagavat sees everything in the Lord, sees everything of the Lord, sees everything in relation to the Lord. Wow, yeah. And sees nothing within his or her vision except the Lord. Doesn't mean he doesn't see, like the buildings and the features of this world, but he sees them all in relation to the Lord. Okay, so carrying on, a couple more points in the purport of verse 17. So, Prabhupada makes a nice point that a devotee who is in any of these categories, even the Kanishta, who, has got some problems. So any devotee from any of these categories, Prabhupada says, is automatically qualified with good qualities. How's that? It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, at least in many ways, qualified with different good qualities, but the Mahabhagavat, like Maharaj Parikshit, is perfect in all respects. So, because Parikshit was born in the family of Yudhisthira, Yudhisthira is addressed as Mahabhaga. Mahabhaga. Or Mahabhagavata. What happened? Mahabhagavata. The best, the greatest of the fortunate people. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport The family in which a Mahabhagava takes his birth is fortunate, because due to the birth of a first-grade devotee, the members of the family, past, present, and future, up to 100 generations, become liberated by the grace of the Lord, out of respect for his beloved devotee. Therefore, the highest benefit is done to one's family simply by becoming an unalloyed devotee of the Lord. Unalloyed. And it's interesting. Do you remember, who remembers how many generations Lord Nrsingadev told Prahlad, how many generations before, from in the past and into the future, were delivered by Prahlad? You can answer if you like. Huh? No! What? You should know. Who said 21? You're right. 21. As I recall, 21 generations in the past and 21 into the future. So 42 generations. But, you know, Prahlad, we don't want to say like he's not so advanced or something like that. But let us just put it that there are others who are more advanced. And therefore Prabhupada says here, it can be up to 100 generations out of respect for the devotee, the Lord's respect for the devotee, up to 100 generations. But, you know, you said 7, and that's also for some like a more neophyte devotee. Yeah, 7 generations, past, future, or between past and future. It's also possible. So therefore, you all devotees, you have to become unalloyed devotees. Okay. All right. All right. Unalloyed. Yeah, and you'll deliver. Of course, you'll deliver yourselves too, obviously. Right, so on to verse 18. The good king, Yudhisthira, inquired, O great souls, will he become as saintly a king, as pious in his very name, and as famous and glorified in his achievements as others who appeared in this great royal family? So, okay, so Maharaj Parikshit is inquiring what is going to be, what is this person going to be like? Is he going to be a special person? Or what's he going to be? So again, Srila Prabhupada's purport. Maharaj Yudhisthira's forefathers were all great saintly kings. Yeah, they were all saints on the royal throne. Unlike so many of the people who are ruling nowadays, there's a shortage of saints. There's just a shortage of saints anyway, but on the thrones or in those national leadership positions, there's a dire shortage. So anyway, Maharaj Yudhisthira was like that, and therefore, and his predecessors were too. Therefore, all the citizens were happy, pious, well-behaved, prosperous, and spiritually enlightened. Yes. Because of the leadership. Actually, leadership is an extremely important aspect of life. even if you have good people but no leadership, or like poor leadership, even if you've got good people very sincere in the team who are to be led, but if there isn't good leadership, then those good people will not be able to do nearly as much good things as if they had good leadership. Yeah, it's really a fact. Yeah, so Yudhisthira was a replica of his ancestors. And he's going to be very happy to hear, of course, what the learned Brahmins say. So, yeah, king has to be pious, fear personified for the upstarts, and must leave an heir with equal qualification. Yes. In the modern day situation, we have Sudras, just so many Sudras. Kalo Sudra Sambhava, Sudras or less. Janmana Jayate Sudra. Everyone is born a Sudra. Actually, everyone is born devotees, less than a Sudra, because at least a Sudra can work. But when you're a little child, you can't even work. You can't even do anything. You can't even put your clothes on. You can't even eat. You just can't do anything for a while. Yeah, same for all of us. So, Janmana Jayate Sudra. By birth everyone is a Sudra, or Kalo Sudra Sambhava. In the age of Kali, everyone's born with the nature of a Sudra. That is flattering. It's flattering, because actually everyone's less than Sudra. And the government, Prabhupada talks about this from time to time in his writings. The current governments, they're pretty bad. They're really in great ignorance. So, Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, so they, means the government people, they should learn from the Srimad Bhagavatam how ideal the administrators must be before they can be given charge, before they can be put in some sort of significant post. Verse 19, the learned Brahmin said, O son of Pritha, this child shall be exactly like King Ikshvaku, son of Manu, in maintaining all those who are born. And as for following the Brahminical principles, especially in being true to his promise, he shall be exactly like Ram, the personality of Godhead, the son of Maharaj Dasarath. Yes, well, that's interesting. Yeah. So the living entity in the material world is discussed. Prabhupada gives some discussion of that. That praja, the term praja is used in the verse. Looking after the praja, maintaining the praja. Parikshit will look after the praja, the people. Yes. The praja, ja is based on janma. So praja, literally, and it's stated here, praja translates as those who are born, those who have taken birth. It's literal, very literal. Right. So, anyway, Prabhupada talks about how they're struggling. The praja are struggling in this material world. It's not easy. Because they're not Krishna conscious, because they're not engaged in devotional service. Yeah. And the prajas include the animals too. The animals must be protected. They're also prajas. They're also born, living entities who are born, living beings. Yeah, so anyway, there's mention of these saintly kings. Ikshvaku's mentioned, the son of Manu. And Prabhupada discusses about the Manus, 14 Manus in one day of Brahma. And who can tell me, who isn't just reading off their telephone, who can tell me what Manu is living now and reigning as Manu? Kaunsa? 11th. Yeah, but what number? What number? Seventh Manu. It's the seventh. We are at 14 in one day of Brahma, means the 12 daylight hours. It's the seventh Manu in a day. It's right in the, so Prabhupada said, not here, but Prabhupada said, it is Lord Brahma's lunchtime now. It's Lord Brahma's lunchtime. It's the middle of his day. So then, you know what happens is, here in this purport, is that Srila Prabhupada goes into like a whole biographical description of these people mentioned, Ikshvaku, Manu, and Lord Ram. Yeah. In regards to Ikshvaku and Manu, one thing, I mean, it's arguably the main thing he focuses on in regards to Ikshvaku and Manu is that they were the beginning, or in the very, very early stages of the parampara, from Krishna to the sun god, to Ikshvaku, to Manu. So they're right in the early stages of the parampara. But then Prabhupada makes the point, which is stated in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 2. Who knows Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 2? You do? That's verse 1. Verse 2. Evam Thank you. Yeah, so the knowledge was handed down, evam parampara rajyam, through the kings, saintly kings. But in course of time, the succession was broken by the curse of Gotama. I think I talked about that. Do you remember that? The curse of Gotama? I was here. curse of Gotama, how the succession was broken, that it's Baladev Vijayabhushan, I think, discusses it in one of his purports of Tattva Sandarbha, that there was a famine or a drought, a famine in the universe, and all the sages in the universe went to the ashram of Gotama, because Gotama's ashram was the only place where there was not a drought. And so there was food and everything was nice. So they were there. So many, loads of these sages, just lots of them. So it was very difficult for Gotama. And then the drought stopped and the famine finished and everyone can go home. But the sages decided they liked Gotama's ashram and they didn't want to leave, and they didn't leave, they wouldn't leave. And Gotama was thinking how to get rid of them, basically. So he did a sort of a sneaky thing, you could say. He made like an effigy, I guess you'd say, of a calf out of straw. And put it by the path that the sages would take down to the river to take bath early in the morning when it's dark. And he left it there, and so then when the sages went to take bath, they kicked over the straw calf. And Gotama came and told them, "You killed a calf. You killed a calf. You got to go. Just go. You can't stay here any longer. You're contaminated." So they had to leave. But before they left, they found the straw calf and they understood he's being sneaky here. So then there's a whole cursing and counter-cursing thing. And in the end, Gotama cursed all the sages in the universe. May you lose your knowledge. No. May your knowledge turn to ignorance. And that's what happened. And Vedic knowledge was lost until Vyasadeva came. Interesting, isn't it? The curse of Gotama. May your knowledge turn to ignorance. So yeah, there's a whole lot, basically, of biographical information. Manu, Ikshvaku, then Manu. Ikshvaku's just a little bit. Manu. And then two paragraphs about Lord Ram. But it's all biographical. It's all biographical information. So we won't go through that. I mean, it's a long purport, but it's all biographical. Okay, devotees, let us just do verse 20. And it's not... Oh, it is a bit long. So I tell you what, we'll stop here and we'll continue from 20 tomorrow. On Monday, excuse me, on Monday. Hare Krishna. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, devotees online. You see this? It's Bhadra Purnima in about a week, on the 10th. If you've got one of these collecting cans, do any of you have a collecting can? Anyway, any of you who are out there in Facebook land or, wherever, and if you've got one of these, can you hand it in? Or no, don't hand it in. But what should you do? Do the deposit. On the back of your can is the bank account information. You can do the deposit, okay? And then send your information to... Anyway, you do your deposit. Send your information. I think you've got the contact details for the organizers of this project. Oh, 5th is the latest. But otherwise, you know what? Whether you got a can or not, we want you to buy a set of Bhagavatam, and if you've got one, you can give it to a friend. And if you haven't got one, get one for yourselves. Because we are trying to distribute before the 10th, if possible, 500 sets of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday, we're up to 146. We're moving forward, but we've got more to do. Hare Krishna. Shri Bhadra Purnima ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hari Bol. Right, so, devotees. We've got some garlands here. We've got 3 garlands, and there's 3 of you. Look at that.